Alright. Oh, shit. Let's move that back where it belongs. There we go. Okay. Alright. I think I'm just about ready. Let me make sure that it's all good quality as best as it can be. Alright. Alright, here we go. Alright. For all zero here. It's my first time doing a thing. Anyway. I've got a project I want to make. Where is it? Not that one. Not that one. Not that one. That's an old one. Where are you? Almost there. Get past you. Okay. Havel. Specifically the Dark Lord ending with Havel in it. So, I need to get that image pulled up. Because this is gonna be interesting, I think. I have a reference for this. Oh yeah, there we go. That's a better one. There we go. So, first thing to do when you start a painting is you actually want to figure out where stuff's gonna go. Especially considering there's only so much room on a canvas and to make a mistake. It'd be kind of hard to backtrack from. So, first, where the figure goes. First time I'm doing this. Okay. Let's move this over here. Oh, and I'm way ahead on part of it, or I shouldn't have the, got all the painting stuff ready. Got the water. Palette. Paint scooper. And in future, I will be using more than just the base colors, red, yellow, blue. But right now, I just got red, yellow, blue. I'm broke. So, where the figure goes, it helps to get a feel for where the middle of it is. I'm gonna put that's where his top of his head's gonna be. That's where his feet are gonna be. Ground is uneven in it, so even it out. That's where his knees are about gonna be. His body's about gonna be. His shape is kind of angled because of his armor. So you're doing a kind of crescent shape. I don't know how clear that is. Might have to sharpen it. Let me see. Settings. Video. No. Cancel. Properties. Configure video. Let's turn up the sharpness a smidge. Maybe that should make it clear. Let's see. Contrast higher. No. Actually. Trying to see where you should be about. Saturation higher or lower? Which one helps? I suppose. I mean, I'm drawing very light right now, so it's gonna be harder to pick it up. But I think that'll do for now. I'll fix it later as I go. Um. Anyway, back to his figure. So head's about here because he's angled out. Shape him out. Get his legs in. He's gonna have a bend in his knee that's not visible because it's covered by his armor. So just skeleton lines. There's ways you could start doing it. You could do skeleton lines, or you could do a net. I usually start with doing a skeleton and then a net and adjusting and moving it in. So his basic shape. His head is going to be about here, but it will look like his head's farther out here because that's where the fan on his helmet is. But, you know, that's what it is. You don't have to get precise on the original sketch because you're not going to see most of the precision once you start going into painting, because you're going to cover up a shit ton of this. Sorry, a ton of it. Language. You're just going to cover up a ton. And while we're at it, before we get going into the hyper details, let's do the outline, like the outside of it. So there's more to it. There's the figures on the outside. Not very visible, but they are there. It's the cult members, because that's a way too big of a part of this. Size, it's not going to be a 1-to-1 scale, but it's going to be roundabout. It's where the moon, or not the moon, the dark sign is. This is all Dark Souls related. Yeah. When you do your initial sketch, you don't want to do it very heavy, because you're going to be redoing it over and over and over again, and you don't want to have to erase too much. And by the way, I put the water close to my feet just so I don't spill it and make a huge mess. Let's see. And right about here is some more detail there, but that'll be straightened out later when you start adding paint. Most of it will be straightened out later. Because that's the beauty of art, is it's not supposed to be perfect, especially not for a while. Let's see, feet are about here, planted down. He's got his plate armor down here. You just want to get the general figure, and then you perfect it later. There's where his plates down below are. With this one, I didn't want to screw it up, so I obsessively did and redid, so I have the best idea possible. I'm still going to screw it up somehow, but feet are down here. So here's right foot around here. His armor plate, burning through lead. I should use a regular pencil, but no, I'm not. Of course not. His plate over here. And his boot kicks out over here. It's not supposed to be perfect. Nothing's supposed to be perfect until it's done. And even then, it doesn't have to be perfect then. What matters is you have fun, right? Let's see. His arms about here, so let's get that one. The hard part with getting too much detail in at once is if you screw up and you have to erase all of it, you have a lot that you have to redo. So just get the general net in, get it close as you want, and then perfect it as you go. Just here, his face is kind of angled down, so his face plate should be around here. And he's looking down, not out of sadness, but out of acceptance. That sounds way more depressing than I meant it. His gauntlet will be around here, because his fist is right about here. And remember, when you're painting, what needs to be conveyed is not so much precision as the idea. Like, you can constantly add details, almost endlessly, especially if it's acrylic. Oil, I've never done before. I'm assuming it's more complicated because it stays wet longer, and more malleable. And it's more malleable most of the time. Let's see this over here. Some detail. So far, I think I'm getting the main detail in without too much difficulty. Definitely helps that I've done this as much as I have. This specific one. And one thing that's going to be very hard to see in the video, but once it's finished, it'll be more, how do I put it? I don't know. It'll be more visible. There's like rocks hanging out behind, and when you do jagged natural formations, it actually helps to kind of go crazy and just have fun with it. Not worry about precision, especially because you're not doing a carbon copy. Whenever you're drawing something, it never has to be perfect and exact. Unless it's a face, then you kind of have to be more, because there's more details in it, and otherwise it's just not going to look like the original subject. But when it comes to less precise things like nature, you don't have to worry about keeping it precise. Then past his foot, there's the actual rock. Because now we're getting to the point. Hold up. There we go. Let's do something else. I want something else in my head. That's better. I like this one. Because now we're actually almost done with the initial sketch. It's not that bad. Let's see. There you go. Initial sketch, pretty much done. And then you can start laying out on the background. So now I'm actually going to pull up the original photo, because this is just from my sketch. It's not perfect, and it's not going to be perfect. I'm going to grab the original image that I'm working off of. Where is it? See my screenshots. Because this is something that I got from in-game. There we are. That's the one I'm using. So, in the sky, it looks like it's supposed to be a moon. It's supposed to be the dark sign. So, got rid of the lead. Then it kind of creeps down. Now, it's not going to be very clear, and that's kind of intentional, that it's going to be a sort of cloudy night with like some light peeking in through the background. So it's going to be kind of a deep blue, violet kind of color. So I'm actually going to start mixing colors now. Should be fine. All right. Now, when it comes to making colors lighter or darker, you're actually man. Uh-oh. Gotta take the... Didn't realize this is a new thing. when you start mixing colors, you're not going to see the original color you're looking for when you just start mixing the reds, yellows, and blues. But before you start deepening or lightening colors, you have to do most of the legwork while it's not precise. Let's see. Need blue. I have none of these seals taken off. Shows my lack of foresight. Alright, let me move this trash bin closer to me. No wonder these jars seem lighter, heavier. Because they have been unused. I thought I already used them. This is fine. My trash bin's just gonna smell like paint. Let's see. Okay, we got the reds, yellows, and blues. I don't know how I can superimpose the image on, but it should be fine. What I'm going for is a very gray color, but you don't need to use actual gray of like white and black. You can get gray just by mixing complementary colors. So for this color that I'm going for, since it's kind of like a bluish hue, you want blue and then mix orange to it. And then, as I'm probably going to need some red into it, but that can be added later. It doesn't have to be precise the first time. So I'm going to start with putting some orange on there, because mixing that later is going to be a pain in the butt, and I don't want to do that. To make colors like orange, you actually want to start off with the lighter color, like yellow, and then add red. I did a dumb, and I added red first, and then I started adding yellow. So it's going to be a little bit more paint than I originally intended. But that's why I end up with stuff like this. But I have too much left over from the last project. Try to find a way to work it in, but for the sake of fun, I'm not going to work it in this time. I'm going to make it all on its own. And you should have plenty of rags on you, and I made a mistake and I put it a little bit too far away. Let's see. Shop towels like these could be on the pricier end, but they last longer. You can reuse the same towel over and over again. You need a lot more blue. So I got a like more reddish orange, which works out because I actually do want it to be kind of a violet color. See, it's already starting to look like that color I'm going for. It's hard to see, but for me it's already starting to look like it. I can see it coming in. Just need to add a little bit more. See, what I accidentally end up doing way too often is I end up making what's it called? Making it too big, because when I mix colors, I kind of get a little bit loose with it, and then I end up running out of room on my palette, which is why it ends up looking like this. But you know, some red. I should have added each color individually, now that I think of it, but it's alright. It'll work out. I think I added too much yellow to it. That's fine. Now let's add more blue. See, you should be trying to remove any streaks of color from it and try to get it towards one solid color. I don't typically do that because I like to make it look a little bit more fun, more character to the thing, but that's just me. Ultimately, it's your painting, do what you want. See, it's already getting sort of grayed out. And that's what you kind of want. You want it to be more grayed out. Because no color is going to be perfectly saturated unless it's a flower. And even then, they're not even perfectly saturated then. Let's see. Let's see. Maybe more blue or more red? Which one? A little bit more red, because it's getting too green. Too much red, but just grab a little bit more blue to even it out. But I've safely escaped the green territory because it's not supposed to be green. Let's add more blue. Hopefully in doing this you can kind of see how you get to colors. Not quite there. Honestly, I think I should use this color and add it to the blue. Because I think I'm just about there at getting the right color. So I'll add this to blue. Okay, I need a smidge more. See, that is getting to be the color I want. That is what I'm looking for. Almost exactly what I'm looking for. And I don't even think I need to add any white to it. I think stick with this solid color and then add stuff as I need it. So let's grab a brush. Let's see. I'm gonna... There's more solid color around these areas, and because let's do it like that way. Ow, stubbed my toe. And even if you're trying to go for a dark color, you don't have to get all that. You don't have to go as dark as you think you do. Because most things are not as dark as they look. Like you look at a shadow and it's most likely not going to be all that dark. In fact, I didn't need to add any gray because that's already looking pretty light. You kind of want to lock in the color to the background. Get it in there. Let's see. I didn't quite do it the same way it looks in there, but that's okay. It's not supposed to just be a carbon copy of whatever you're referencing. Nothing should ever be a carbon copy of what you're referencing. Unless your aim is to do a portrait. But it's not often gonna look perfect, so don't even worry about it. Let's see. Let's see. had so much trouble locking in. I think it's the canvas. It's a different canvas than I'm used to. I think that's the chief issue, because it's not locking in the way I'm used to. Oh, there we go. Then got more deep colors over here. See, I think it's too violet, honestly, but that's okay. With the background, you can keep playing with it till it's the way you want it. You can play with it pretty much as you want before it's done. It's almost watercolor the way it's looking, but that's okay. See, rather than what I normally do, I'm not grabbing like a solid chunk in a fat brush, because usually I use much bigger canvases. But with this one, you don't really need to do that. Kind of just lock it in. Alright. That's not quite what I'm going for. You know what it needs? It needs something. What does it need to get to that color? You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna just throw some of that base color I was using that I added to the blue. See how that works out together. Let's see. And when you're using paint, you don't need to get all of the paint off unless you're switching to a light color. These are so far the same shade. So let's go to the back over here. And then add some of this in. Since it's still relatively wet, you can actually kind of blend the colors together a little bit. It's not perfect, but since it's still a little bit wet, you can pull some of the other color to what you're adding. The thing that helps me is just starting by adding stuff, just putting paint on the canvas and then working it out later. Yeah, it's gonna get there. Hopefully what I'm demonstrating with this is you can keep correcting with paint. You can keep correcting all you want. You can get to the color you want. Just keep trying. That's what matters. Ultimately, just keep trying, keep adding stuff. It's kind of like how my old teacher used to say, don't take your pencil off the paper, just keep working at it. Just keep adding. You'll get there eventually. I'm not the same as Bob Ross in that he was so good at doing stuff quickly and making it look good, and I was never able to keep up with that. Like, I've always thought it was really cool. I've never been able to keep up with that, and hopefully if anyone else is like that, you might see this go, hey, so I'm not alone in that, but maybe, I don't know. Let's see. Let's add. Yep, this is the hard part about Havel, and why this is going to be a bit more of a challenge, in that since I didn't lay out the details perfectly the first time, and his outline is probably not perfect, it's gonna be a little bit weird, but it's gonna be okay. With me starting off with a lighter hue, I can correct things as I go. It is what it is. And then let's grab some of this, start mixing the two together. And that's getting to be more the color you're supposed to be going for. So one thing that you can do is layer. Layering helps so much. And now it's actually starting to come together. It's kind of like with coloring with pencil. If you've never done it before, this might not make a ton of sense, but with colored pencils, to do different blends, instead of getting like 20,000 different colors for colored pencils, you can mix the colors by stacking them on top of each other. Like you want orange? Well, you do red and then add yellow. You want to make green? Well, then you do blue and then add yellow until you get the color you're looking for. It's an interesting thing about painting is you can layer it. It will have a different texture and it will get harder as you go, but you can definitely layer it. And that's usually what I end up doing. Because that color is what I'm looking for. I might have to change it as I go, but it's getting there. It's definitely getting there. And then noticing this negative space is where the figure is. You paint around and then you work your way to the figure, because you can, the last thing that you want to run into is when you've gotten all this work done going, oh man, look at this, I got this figure down perfect, and then when you're doing the background, it cuts into them and you realize, oh crap, I gotta redo all of that. But luckily when you do the background first and then you do the figure, you're just filling an empty space. It's a lot nicer and it feels so much better than having to fix something you screwed up before. It is a much better feeling. But now it's all coming together. It's kind of like when you do a second coat on your fence, because the first layer of stain didn't stick and it didn't quite do what you were intending, so you go again. Simply just go again. So this first part is going to be the first, well, I guess you can call it second or third layer of paint on the background, but you will add more. What I did for my high school project was, lucky for me, the background was inherently blurry, because it was a figure, like a dude, and then it was as if, well, I mean, it was a copy of somebody else's portrait of a dude. I just call him a science dude because I have no idea who it's supposed to be. I think there was a name for who the figure is, but never really cared. And I don't feel bad about it. I don't even think I memorized who the painter was. I think I still have my notes on it, but the whole thing was a lesson. It was kind of like a final exam for my painting class, as you do painting referencing something else. I wanted to do something Doom, but it had to be an actual painting. But you know what? I get it. You're in a class to learn how to do art, so you gotta learn from art. Official art. I'm not hearing anything. Well, that's fine. That's fine. See, it's already coming through. It's looking pretty darn close to how it's supposed to. In fact, I think I'm just gonna start using up what's left and putting in to spots that I think it belongs. Because, remember, it's not an exact copy. It's nothing you ever make is supposed to be an exact copy unless it's for like a school lesson. And then it's like, oh, you gotta do this. Like, I got to pick what I did from a selection because everything I thought of got turned down. But, you know, I had a good teacher, so I don't really care. And that is it for the first bit. And then you add more as you go. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix all those colors together. And I'm going to use that to create the black for the robes. And I'll just add more detail as it goes. Because the important thing with the painting is don't be done with it until you're happy with it. When you're happy with it, then you stop. Because there is such thing as overproducing. You don't want to do that. That ends up being a very unhappy experience. What did I hear? I don't know why I'm not hearing that, but that's fine. Now, okay. I'm going to take this chance while I have it and use the remainders. Because one thing that I like to do, I don't know if there's anybody like me with this, but I like to just keep a consistent theme and reuse the colors as much as possible. Because then I don't have to waste so much paint. Let's see, we're going for a kind of grayish color, and then I'm adding black because the robes are actually just straight up black. But I'll add a little bit of black, not a ton. Let's add some blue, more blue, because it's going to be a cool color. Let's just add a little bit more blue to the mix. Kind of like in comics when to do black they use blue. And then they highlight it with white. It's not all that different. Because you'd be surprised how much color is in something that you think doesn't have color. You would be surprised. Now let's go with some black. Mix that in there. You don't want to go too heavy on black. Because you can add black, but you can't really take it away. Yeah, I could go with some more. The hard part is you end up burning through white. When you're new to painting, you end up burning through white quicker than you go through black. Because you always, like, a mistake I constantly make is I start with a color, and then I'm like, yeah, I'll just add some white. And then, because I've already sunk some in there, I'm like, okay, I'll add some more white. Without realizing you can pull away from the original color. You can pull away and just use some of it, and then add it to the white. You don't have to use the whole thing. In fact, one thing you can do to mix colors is you can use your brush to pull it away. You can use the brush to pull it away versus using the knife. I use the knife though, because it's easier for me, but you know, that's just me. Now, this is going to be a lot darker of a color, but it's supposed to be a lot darker. Actually, it's not as dark as I was hoping for it to be. But that's probably because my brush is still slightly wet. But I might use some actual black to add some extra depth to it. But that's for future me to think about. You perfect colors as you go. You don't always have to start with the right one. Actually, no, I don't think I need to add any more black to this. This is good. Just layer it. And then grab some, pull it down over here. You notice how it already is... I added blue, but it doesn't look blue anymore. It doesn't look like it has blue, but it does. There is definitely blue in there. Visible or not. And one thing that you'll notice in like modern art is they use a lot of solid blocky colors. There's something about it that just doesn't sit as real to me. So I don't like to use it. I like to make my colors very mixed and wild, because that just feels more real to me. Even in something that's supposed to be the same color, same mute color, you can mix it together and it makes it a lot more tasty as a color. Because especially the more cheap acrylic paints, a lot of them like to block up and get sticky. So when you start to layer, especially, and you want to layer something else, it pulls it off of the canvas if you don't use a good primer. This is a pre-built canvas. I usually make my own, but this is pre-built because I was blessed with somebody giving me them. And the only downside to it is the canvas is the gesso on it doesn't have the same grip as the ones that I use when I make them myself. But I could just solve that by adding gesso to these instead. And if you don't know, gesso is a type of primer. You can actually get different colored gessos, I'm pretty sure. I just stick with white because it's easier to see the color you're putting on. But if you got a like gray gesso, it can also work really well. And brown for portraits, that can also work really well. Just whatever primer you pick. It's all up to you, really. When you lock in the paint to the brush, it sticks with it longer rather than just putting it on the tip. Because then the only issue is you kind of ruin the brush. Because as it gets closer to the metal, you don't want it to touch the metal. But look at how I screwed up. It's already touching the metal. But it is what it is. It ain't gonna kill it. Unless it falls off, which has happened to me before. You know, it is what it is. This one has less detail. This one has more detail. So I'm gonna start by doing solid lines, and then I'll lighten it by adding some more blue, I think. Because what I'm noticing, which is weird that I'm noticing it now, you start to notice more details on things when you start to actually look at focusing on where the color's coming from. You don't notice it at first until you start thinking, man, I feel like I've seen that before. So, you know, just start with doing the basic layers. And then this one, because it's cloth, because it's on like a cultist robe, because it's cloth, it has its wrinkles, and it focuses from where the original ripple is. So most of them will kind of stem off the same part. You'll notice when you actually start to fill it in with more details, but so far, this is what I'm going with. It would be helpful to use a smaller brush, but, you know, that's alright. When you start doing the finer details, you use a finer brush. It is what it is. And I don't think it gets that deep of a color back here. Up here it's a bit deeper, so I'll go over here, add some in there. I don't really know what these bumps are. I think it's elbows, but yeah, whatever. It actually have been smart of me if I had actually looked at what those are supposed to be, so I'd have a reference. But I'm already here. I'm already adding paint. And one thing is, even though it's not very visible, you can find the same color in multiple different spots of something. So it will be visible when it all comes together. There's actually some over here around a completely different part. So I'm just adding a little bit and then leaving it be. I'll come back to that. And there's going to be some highlights over here. So just penciling that in. And then I'm going to start mixing a color to start adding, because I'm just about done with the ripples. I'm going to start adding some blue. Now, I think instead of using the paint knife, I'm going to start... just got paint all over that. Oh, that's fine. Instead of using the paint knife, now I'm just going to start adding some blue to it. Pulling some blue and mixing the colors. You want to try to remove streaks, but I don't really worry about it all that much. Let's pull some more blue away, mix it in, and then start pulling into it. See, that's not what I'm looking for. That's fine. You can keep trying. Let's give some blue, mix it in there. That's more what I'm looking for, I think. Let's go like that. There we go. That's a little bit closer to the color you want. So when you start to get to the finer details, you want to kind of go off with something else. See, that's a lot closer to what I'm trying to get. It doesn't look like it right now, but once you start seeing how everything's kind of dark in it, these slightly lighter shades will start to pop more. You'll start to see them more visibly. But right now, it's hard to tell because so far, everything that's on the canvas is dark. Everything's a much more deep color. An important thing to note with saying shade versus depth is shade is literally depth. That's what it is. It's something that's deeper in, so it's going to be darker. Like you look into a forest, it's going to be a bit darker. But that's because you're deeper into the forest. Not because the forest is darker in itself. That's what I'll do right there. These ripples will be far more obvious once you start to work them in, but for now, they're a little bit harder to see. And even though this one's less detailed, it actually still has some streaks of color. It's not quite as detailed as on the other one. So I'm gonna leave it a little bit and then add some highlights over here. But everything so far is being like very cautious with highlights because it's very dark. The entire image here is just dark. But let's go like color some in. Just a little bit more color. And then start working it in. And then this is a much lighter object right over here, but that's okay. That's okay. When you do sharper edges, you point the brush toward the edge, where the edge is. Not so much as like trying to fill it in like that. You point the brush toward the edge. So if your edge is down here, the surface is back there, you cut. Then I'll start adding more of that. And then there we go. It's already starting to seem like its own little thing. So when you got more flat surfaces, even though you don't want it to end up being flat, you want to kind of paint it like you would a fence. It's not going to stay like that. You'll add more depth as it goes, as you mix colors and all that fun stuff, but now I'm just going to start pulling the paint off. And grab the lighter color that we had from before and start adding it back in for the shade. And right now, it doesn't look very detailed, but that's okay. It's okay. You're going to start adding more stuff as you go, and if you see some white spaces, you can fill that in later. It's fine. Just take the time and look for what you're missing. Right now, it's going to have to be cleaned up, but that's okay. That's okay. That's perfectly fine. Let's get a very grayed out version of this. You know what? I'm going to cheat. I'm going to use some white. I'm going to cheat a little bit. And I'll pull it into here. Cheat a little bit more. And then I'll start making it a bit foggy around here. And then start smudging it in a little bit. That way it doesn't quite look as obvious as it is. Just start to smudge it in because it's a little bit foggy out there. Let's get that in a little bit more. Because remember, this is the background. This is not the focal, so you don't have to worry so much about it. Hopefully the attention should be pulled to the figure in the center, not so much what's going on back here. It's a little bit foggy. Not a lot, just a little bit. Dry brushing is kind of a cheat, but it works. Start to get the stuff a little bit more precise as you go. Dry brushing's kind of my favorite thing, because you can layer color and just change it a little bit. Say you have blue, but you want to add a little bit of green, but you still want it to be blue. Dry brushing. And you smear it a little bit like you're trying to scrape off the paint, but you know you're just trying to leave a little bit in there. You want to leave a little bit of that in there. Not a lot, just a little bit. And then let's get some more gray in there for highlight, because you reuse a lot of color. You'll always reuse some color. And now let's get some white, because you want to, this is metallic, so you're gonna do a little bit of shading, a bit of livening up, some highlights. It's metallic, so just add a few highlights, not crazy. In fact, I think that's enough. I think that's enough highlights. Yeah, that's good. Slightly metallic. You're just gonna leave it slightly. Not gonna go too crazy on it. But that's done. In fact, I think that's gonna end up being the same color as that. But that's for future me to think about. See, you're reusing the same towel. You can use it to like constantly, so long as you don't let your hands end up the same way, you know. Let's see. Now, the rocks that are in the background. Or you know what? This color is what I think this should be. So actually, you know what? While I'm here, I'm going to start doing some of that. And I'm going to cheat a little bit. So let's start doing those rocks in the first layer. We'll go in. Yeah, I think this is what that's supposed to be for later. But, let's see. I think that'll be the right color eventually. So we're doing the first layer. We can do highlights later. The first layer will be the basic of what it's going to be. Then you can add more details later. can always add more detail. And what you can do to sort of give yourself hints is actually leave some streaks in, because this is supposed to have a little bit of a crease in it, in the rock. It's supposed to have a little bit of a crease, but I'm cheating by leaving a little bit of a streak so I know where to find that crease later. And then just kind of meet some in like that. It's a little cheat, but it works. And that's what matters. That'll help me find it later. Because now we're going to add a little bit more splotches into there. And see how we're going from different parts. And we're adding little bits of subtle detail to kind of keep it all coherent. Because it's all going to be the same. It's all going to be the same eventually. It's going to be the same rock. It's going to be the same... it's going to be the same core colors, because you'd be surprised how much of the same colors retained. And then start dragging his shadow down. I'll blend that in. Probably, you know, I might just use my finger to blend that in, because that's his shadow. I don't know how he casts a shadow, but he does. That's okay. It's okay. And see, even though his shadow is there, it's not that. It's a little bit more subtle. See? It's almost like it's not even there. I mean, it looks a little bit more pronounced because the contrast is higher on that, but it's getting there. In fact, I think there's a slight glare which is causing it to be not quite so visible. Yeah, there's... Currently we're just doing the background. Let's see. I don't know how clear that is, but it's actually not that... It's not as bright as it probably looks from down there. I need to find a better way to do that. But it's actually not that... It's not that... Yeah, it's pretty close to what it's supposed to be. And you know what? I got a darker color in there, and I think I'm going to use it for, you guessed it, this little bit in here. It's pretty easy to make a circle if you really try. And then when I start adding some of the other colors in, I'm going to start adding more depth to that. But, you know, it's a soft glow for now. That's where the dark moon will be. In case you didn't notice what I did, you do circle motion, but when you're doing that, you twist the brush at the same time, and you hold it on one axis. I was holding it on there. And then you can change the size of it based on that same way. And if you get it down, you can just keep, you can make circles kind of consistently. Because it's not quite perfect, but it's pretty close. I'd say it's close enough. What was I doing? Oh yeah, that's right. I was adding some more texture to this rock. Let's see. Which you'll get more as you go. Currently the brush strokes are pretty prominent, but when you start doing the highlights, it'll start making it a little bit easier to tell that it's not exactly that. It's almost like you're shading with a pencil, but you're not quite. It's fun. When you get the hang of it, it's pretty fun. Now, I'm going to grab some straight white to do some of those highlights, and I'm going to dry brush it in. Because I haven't rinsed off this brush because I've been using the same colors. I mean, for the most part, you use the same colors in most stuff. The one I got up there it's because it's a copy of something, so it's gonna have the original artist's tricks as close as I could get to it, but do little bits of highlights, strong white in there, and some little highlights in there. Let's see, where's the other one? Some highlights over here. Because there's a reason why there's a shadow, because there's a little bit of light coming off of that. So just let the light come in and use it. It's a little bit brighter, but that's okay. It's getting to what it's supposed to be. Some more color, some more texture. Nothing's supposed to be perfect. It's all gonna have its own little flow. Now, get those rocks in there. Let's grab those. Let's start painting in those rocks. And I might use some black, more black than that, actually, yeah. Surprising, I've been using more black than white this time. I never do that. I think I've gotten lazy. Let's see, get this guy over here. Pull some black. Let's see. Put some of that in there. Already coming together. And see, this is just the background, but it's already coming together. When you get to the finer details, it's going to get a lot harder. But right now, it's actually quite good how it's coming together. I'm going to grab more black than that. That's a little bit too bright. But it's already coming together. That's a good thing. See, one of the things that actually is slightly benefiting from the fact that it's subtle is it was subtle to me when I was looking at the original picture. I didn't originally see these rocks. So the fact that they're on the more subtle end is not exactly a bad thing. In fact, that's pretty close to what it originally was. So, you know what? I see no downside here. Well, there's the problem. It bled into the lighter color. But that's okay, use it. Use it for a little bit more detail. Notice I've still got some white on there. Some white on the brush. That's okay. It'll actually add some texture to the rock. When a little bit of white bleeds into it, and a little bit of the blue that's still left over on that brush, it'll bleed in and actually add a little bit to it. So now we're going to finish up the background with a completely new set of paint. Because the rest of it is going to be like orangish hues, reddish, orangish, yellowish. It's going to be more interesting than that, than just using these muted colors I've been using. Let's put that in there. So now, here comes the fun. Since we're resetting, basically, clean off the brush. I'll clean it off better with the new rag in a minute. And let's see, where's my... you know what? I'll just put it in the trash bin right next to me. Now, here's the fun part, is you're going to leave a lot of leftover colors you're going to use for later. And that's okay. And see that? We're leaving that. We're leaving that orange and stuff, because I'm going to use it later. Now let's get a new rag. That rag lasted a while, because these towels are good, and they're also strong, so you don't get a bunch of fiber flakes. That sounds like a really terrible cereal. Then clean off the knife. You can start mixing colors like it's brand new. And clean off the brush, because we're actually going to be done with this brush. We're not using this anymore. Not today. This up, and we see the other side. Actually, that side's already been touched. This is the other side. There we go. If your bucket of water doesn't look like mud by the end of the painting, you're not having fun. There we go. Now, it doesn't look like it, but it's fresh. There we go. Now, I'll start grabbing the paint and using it again. So with this, because the colors on the original one are pretty mute, I'm going to try to dry brush it onto there. Just add a little bit, dry brushed on. And then, because it's not going to be super strong color, we'll add some more on the highlights, but it's going to be bleeding into it. It's not going to be completely new. It's not going to be bright lights. There's not going to be anything bright aside from the subject in this one, actually. The subject's actually going to be slightly bright. This is going to be like the light peeking in from the back. So it's going to be a little bit out here. And then as you get to a more dry end, you can start using it a little bit more crazily. And it's bleeding through there, so you can start wiping some of it off with your finger or with a brush. Just trying to beat it into there so that it's more mixed in than just solid. And then I shouldn't have started washing it off because I need to do the highlights next. So let's see. Let's do the highlights. Not quite done with this brush yet. Let's see. Let's do the highlights here. Here. And here. And here. There we go. Now it's a little bit more clear that it's light peeking through. And add more foggy colors later, but you know. This is almost done, because next up, and then we'll be done with the background until we do the finer details. After the figure's done, I'm going to do that light around there, because you could use the negative space, but you really shouldn't, because it's got more colors in it than it looks. It's got, let's see, looks like a bluish white with some yellow mixed in there. So let's start getting some bluish white with some yellow mixed in there. Let's do blue, a smidge of yellow, because you don't want it to be quite green, and then some white. And since white's going to be the main color, you're going to pull some colors into the white rather than pulling a lot of white into the color. This brush is done for now. We're going to be working with the finer brush because we're going to be doing some finer details. Let's pull a little bit of that into there. And then, actually, no, I'll leave that be. That looks good to me. That's a good color. I think that's good enough. Because this is going to be... That will be perfected later, but that's okay for now. It's got some light bleeding out. And then let's get some of that in there. And hopefully it's a little bit wet still. And I'm going to be trying to do a little foggy. Leaving that be. Perfect it later. Now, the hard but interesting part. The main focus. But I think I might have gotten a message that it's time to be done. I think right now is actually a good time to call it. Because I think I'll finish it up tomorrow. If I feel like it. Currently, I don't have plans, but I might have plans tomorrow. I don't know. Life works in mysterious ways, but it is what it is. Alright. Make sure you clean your stuff off properly. I can't quite show that because I'm going to be using the sink. But you want to make sure that when you dry it onto something, no color comes out. But I think that'll do it for today. Yeah. Let me show what it looks like right now, and then I'll go. This is just the start. You'll get more. But notice how it's literally just the start. it will be continuous until it's exactly how you want it, and nothing more, nothing less.